In this video, we are going to go ahead and cover landscape and foliage. Let's go ahead and get started. When we last left off, we had a nice little scene where we need to get outside, and we can get outside. Of course, once we get outside, we have a small problem, and we would just simply fall off the end of the world. Let's get introduced to the basics of our landscape system and make a basic landscape. In our modes menu at the top, we have our different modes. The third one is going to give us landscape. And when you click on that, you're going to get this giant green grid. And this is your basic landscape. This is your template for your landscape. And it's a bit bigger than we want. And we have a ton of sections. Now, we're not going to cover in detail everything because, well, the landscape itself is a huge undertaking. But we're going to cover making a small one, maybe molding a little bit, adding some props and things like that. So our landscape has these basic options. And you're going to see a location, a rotation, and stuff like that for where it's going to start off with. We should probably set a good location here. Let's click on let's go back to place. Click on our floor, and our floor has -290 for the Z. We'll go back to landscape, and we'll set this up as -290 for the Z. And that should roughly give us a landscape of there. We probably should go a little smaller. Let's go with -310. That way our landscape doesn't actually intersect with the in here. Is that going to intersect at all? I think -310 should be okay, right? Well, we'll try. We can always move it. So we'll go with -310 for our landscape. And at this point, we have grids, overlapping grids, and my eyes are going crazy. So in terms of the size, that's all based on these things. Your quad size is your section of your quads. The higher the quad size, the more detailed your sections are. We'll go with the default 63. Sections per component, 1 or 2. We're going to go with 1. And then their number of components. This is your biggest thing. If we go with 1 by 1, this is going to be the size of your terrain. 64 by 64 is our basic resolution. Let's go with something like 3 by 3. This is going to give us a little bit of room in every direction. We'll go ahead and we can hit create, or we can add a material. Let's add a material so we actually have something when it starts. Thankfully, with the starter content, we actually have a generic grass ground material. This isn't going to look the best. It's only one material. That's it. It's not your biggest looking thing. It's a grass with a material on it. You have other things you can do. You can add multiple layers. You can add multiple paintings on them to get better looks. But we're just going to go with grass for now. After we've set up our basics and hit create, we have our landscape. That's it. That's all we need to do when we have an actual landscape. We go in here, check for errors. Okay, we're good. We have our grass is probably too low, our landscape. We'll go back to place. We'll find our landscape, and let's go ahead and move that up to -300. And there we go. Now it looks like our grass is actually intersecting where we want it. So we have our landscape. We have a few issues where we have no landscape under here, and then it looks pretty flat. So let's go ahead and change that up a bit. After we've created our landscape right here, we go into our sculpt mode. And our sculpt basically works kind of like it's sculpting. It looks like modeling. You have some tools, what you're going to do with the tools, and then how well you're going to work with those tools. So by default, we have something like this. And if I was to click my mouse, I'm going to get this to happen. If I was to right click my mouse, well, nothing's going to happen. And if I click my mouse over here, well, that's going to happen. You can undo, so Control Z is undoing. This is using our sculpting tools. By default, sculpt is our main option. The type of brush is circle, and then what type of fall off, whether it's smooth, linear, spherical, different types. And you can play with those. This is all up to you. Let me undo this. These are our settings for our brushes. You can see our brush here. The inside is going to be the basics, and then we have our fall off. I change my fall off to, let's say, 1. You're going to see a pretty large amount of fall off, and it's not going to be the edges are not going to be very hard. We set our fall off to 0. You're going to notice it literally is going to go on this edge. We have 100% strength on the entire thing. Default fall off is pretty good. Most of your strength is in the middle, and then it'll smoothly go out. Brush size is the size of the brush. It's really that simple. Big brush or little brush. Let's go ahead and do that. Tool strength is just how strong it's going to be if you're using like a pen and things like that. And then you have other things like height maps. Let's just carve some basic stuff. We're going to make a few little mountains. We're going to make a little river going through it. So let me drop this down to something. Let me do my river first. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, how am I going to do a river when all I'm doing is raising up the ground? Well, we have modifier keys. This raises up the ground when you click, or shift lowers the ground. So let's go ahead and go over here. We'll hold down shift and we just literally will start painting. And I'm just running over around different things, holding down shift and just painting in some recesses here. See? Going down through there. And we'll go like that. Maybe we'll break it off here. Go like this. And you're literally painting. You're using a brush and you're painting and you are going around things and you're drawing lines. Maybe we'll go over here now, increase our brush size, do some, let's do our brush size a little bit more like this. Here we go. I'll do some like little mountains here. Every time I click, I'm getting some mountains to go up. And you have to play with it. This is artistic and it's just a simple attempt to throw some art. Over here, I want a little bit of a lake. We're going to have separate, so we'll go down over here like that. Now we can go back over to our little scene here and maybe raise this up. Whoa, okay, I just went into my scene itself. Okay, let's make this a 0 for the fall off, much smaller brush. And let's see about raising this up. So we have kind of like, there we go. We have something like that. So we actually have some form of foundation. Now the cool part is we can go inside of here. Let me go back to unlit mode. We'll make our brush a little bit smaller, like that. And then we'll just use, oh, way too big. Let's set this to 50. There we go. We'll hold down shift. And we'll just start removing everything that's inside of my room. Like this. Because that's kind of weird that's inside the room. And we'll just start erasing stuff like this. See? Not that hard. Get rid of stuff like this. This stuff's a bit big. Wow, that's big. Whoops. Actually get inside. Start removing these things. Just get these to go right under. Like that. You know, maybe you want some overgrowth in here. Maybe you don't. I kind of don't. This is weird. Maybe if you had broken walls, it may be more appropriate. But for me, and I'm just holding on shift and rubbing over and smoothing things down. You could have just the fall off, the brush type. Smoothing allows you to flatten. There's smooth, there's flatten, there's ramp. There's different ways of doing erosions and noise. Tons of options in here. But for us, we're just doing something basic and simple. Which is why when I do this, we can get rid of hopefully all of our grass. It looks really weird when it goes into our building. There we go. See? And we've got good out there. You can do something cool like we'll go in here and we'll do our fall off to something like that. And then you do stuff like that. It makes it look like it's kind of, you know, not perfect. It's growing up a little bit in front of our house here. And you decorate. You draw yourself whatever you want. And I've gone ahead and I've done that. Let me switch this back to lit. And we have our basic. Now I'm going to take my sculpt and turn this to smooth. Let me go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. And smoothing basically allows you to smooth out some of your more jagged edges. See how these are more jagged? You just run your smooth brush along edges. And it gives you a nice smooth edge instead of a harder edge. It's a nice way to clean up stuff after you've gone ahead and sculpted. Like this. See? And we got some little smoother edges there. No longer sharp edges. There we go. Okay, so we've got ourselves our basic terrain. That's pretty much the basics of a landscape. Sculpted a few hills and valleys, but let's make it a little more impressive. Let's throw some water in there. And the cool thing is you can just basically, we're just going to put in a water plane. We're going to go into our content, and I don't know where. Well, let's move. This should be under meshes. Let's move that there. Well, I guess it'll just actually it'd be shoot. It wouldn't be a blueprint. I guess it would just make a new folder called props itself. There we go, all by itself. And we're going to make a plane that has a material on it. When you're done in the landscape, switch back to your regular mode. Let's find our plane. We'll type in plane here under filter and go back to content, and we'll find our shape plane. Drag this, copy it under props, and copy here. I don't remember where the plane's at. Okay, it's under game, starter content, shapes. I just used your content browser. I went to my main content folder, typed in plane, because that's what I'm looking for, and found it. Then I just duplicated it into ours. We're going to call this static mesh water, because it's going to be our water. And we're going to plop this into our world. Let's resize this dramatically. Let's go with 50 by 50. And not even close to big enough. So let's go with 300 by 300. Yeah. Hey, look at that. We got something that's working. See how we have this giant water? I think it's a bit big, but okay. So 300 by 300 on the... wait, 250? Let's try 250 by 250. Oh, that's, you know what? It's not that big of a deal. Maybe this is kind of like an island. Okay, so we'll go with that. Now what we're going to do with this plane is move it up. And we'll move it up to something more like, I'm thinking more like that. Or maybe we want to go a little bit lower and we can sculpt some more. Yeah, we'll go a little bit lower. We'll go with something like that, and then I can sculpt some more. We can go back into our landscape. Go back into our sculpting like we have set here. Hold down shift and just, I'm in smooth, so that didn't help. Go back to sculpting. There we go. And we'll just shift out so it's deep enough so we have a little bit of, there we go, like that. Go over here. Use shift to connect those two together. We'll just connect these some more here. This is one of those instances where you have nothing to grab onto with focus. So increasing your mouse speed for your camera over here would be helpful. There we go. See, look at that. Yep, see? That works, right? Okay, we got a little connector. There we go. So that'll work. We have this nice little river. We don't have a texture assigned to it. We're going to fix that right now. Let's go into our handy dandy pre-done materials, and let's grab our lake water. We're going to copy this into our materials and then rename this. We're going to rename this to material river. Drop that onto our plane, and there's our material for our river. Now, one issue we're going to have here is this river material is set to a high metallic, which means it's gonna not really look as well as we want it. We're gonna make some adjustments. We're gonna open it up, and this is why we made a copy, so we can actually adjust this. I don't want metallic. I want no metallic plugged in. And this is going to give me this look once we finish compiling. Metallic is giving us the reflectiveness. I don't want reflectiveness. I'm going to give us a little bit of a transparency. So now we've got something lighter. That's good. Now I want to go ahead and give us some transparency. We'll go to our river. We're going to go on the left under our details panel, and we're going to change the type of blending. Opaque is solid, no transparency. Translucent is transparency. We'll change this to translucent. Some things will connect and some things will disconnect. What we need to do down here under lighting mode is change this down to surface translucency volume. That's going to allow us to have our normal map work and our transparency work. So to summarize it, take our water, change it from blend mode opaque to translucent, and then under translucency, lighting mode down to surface translucency volume. This is going to give us a translucent water. Now you may be wondering, well, no, I can't see anything through it, so it's not really translucent. That's because our opacity is not set. 1 and click to add a new node, hook it up to our opacity, and this determines how opaque it's going to be. We're going to go with 0.4. Hit apply and let it compile. We should see a nice little semi-transparent sphere here when it's done. And we'll go back to our map and wait for it to finish. Of course, we have this giant thing here we can get rid of. Switch back to our place mode. And there we go. We actually have a little bit of a transparent water. Let's run through our example. And I'm going to have to get rid of that probably at some point. We can run through, and we now have some terrain we can walk on. We have some hills. We have some water. Water looks kind of cool. If you look at it closely, you can actually see it kind of moving. Now, this is not a fantastic water example. There's actually some water examples that Epic has that you can pull out of their examples. This is just meant to show some basic water and some things we can do with it. Now, there's two problems. One, you can see this really ugly shadowing right here, which I'm going to correct in a second. And two, well, we can walk on the water. We're not the Flash. We need to actually fix this. Now, why can we walk on the water? Hopefully you know why. We've created a item, and we have collision. Well, collision, remove collision, save, and now we've removed all collision. Now we should have no collision actually on this item, and we're just going to walk through it. Since it's not deep enough to need us to swim, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Now our second part, this ugliness. This is because of the size of our landscape. This original part when we created it here with the landscape, this grid size, which is our quad size, it doesn't leave a lot of, it's our resolution and just a few other options. It doesn't leave us a lot of room for smoothing, which is why we have our smooth tool. We go back in here and smooth. This all happened, by the way, from when I was lowering it to give me my water. If we go back in and smooth, you'll find you're going to be able to get rid of your issues. So we'll go back in. We'll smooth out those ugly errors. Like that. There's probably more somewhere, right there. But it's all about artistic look and spending the time. I think this is a bit too deep right there. There we go. Actually, you know what? It'd be kind of cool. Let's do a little bit of a, come on, you can do it. I know you can do it. Okay, seriously, why are we not doing this? Aren't I trying to build? Oh, again, I have the smooth tool on, that didn't help. I was trying to sculpt a little, there we go. There we go. There we go. I made like a little bridge. There we go. And smooth the edges like that. Boom. Do some more smoothing. It's all artistic. It all takes time to learn. This is one of my best attempts, which is horrible, but still nonetheless. There we go. We got a little bridge. We got some water. We got like a little island over there. We'll go back out. And then we should be able to not only have some smoother parts, we actually have some water that we can go into. And I should probably increase that. This is just a plane. This is not a water volume. It's not intended to allow you to swim. It's just for looks. It's allow you to look as you're going through. It's just a simple material effect. There are water volumes that allow you to simulate swimming, and then you need to use things like two-sided materials so it looks like you're in the water. And then, of course, switch your character to maybe a swimming animation and various other things. It's all connected. We have a basic landscape, but it's very plain. We could go into our props and grab a bush and drop a bush in and drop a bush in and drop a bush in and drop a rock in, and we could repeat this indefinitely. And it would be annoying. Oops, that was our landscape. But not only that, it's going to cause performance problems because it's going to draw them all individually. What we want to use is our Foliage tool. We click on Foliage. We now have our Foliage tool. And what it's going to do is it's basically going to combine everything together when it places them and make them perform better. Now the cool part is the placing. We can drop foliage here. Boom. There's a bush. Now I could go to paint and click, and I got a bunch of bushes. Now you notice it's going to compile the shaders. It needs to compile them because it's using a different version now because everything is instanced together. Because everything's instanced together, we're going to get our better performance. We'll drop it down, we'll look, and boom, we have a bunch of bushes all set up and ready to go. And since it's painting, I could zoom out and just literally paint bushes like that. That's pretty cool. And yes, you could always grab other foliage types and paint, and you'll have them mixed together. Obviously, this isn't the result we want. Let's go ahead and undo a couple times and get rid of them all. All of these items have individual settings. When you click on them, it has settings such as how they're set up, density, radiuses, placements, random changes, if they can be moved, just a ton of settings. We're going to adjust a few of these just to make it a little more pleasing. So our bush, let's go ahead and set up 10 bushes. And we'll, oops, that was our rocks. Gotta stop doing that. Let's go ahead and set up 10 bushes per unit. And here's the radius between foliage instances. Let's set this up to something like 10. We have some spacing. Scaling. Right now it's going to place them all the identical size, a 1 for scale. Let's change this to free. And we'll change it to something like 0.5 and 1 and 0.5. And we'll do 0.5 on all of them. So it can be randomly between half the size and normal size on all 3 dimensions. Placement. These are things such as if they're going to be aligned if they're going to be aligned vertically. For example, they're always going to be facing up, or if they're going to be aligned to the normal. So if you have bushes on this edge, they're going to be facing the edge outwards rather than straight up. So it allows you to correct some things. And then you have stuff such as what angle do you want them to be on, the heights that they can be at. So for example, you could have a certain tree be in a valley, and then as you are decorating higher, a different type of tree replaces it. And then at a certain point, you have no trees because it's too high. And you've set this all up as like a random generator type thing. We'll go back into our rock. We'll set this up as 2. Now our rocks are huge. I don't like our rocks. They're too big. Let's change our scaling to free. We'll do it something like 0.1 to 0.2. Really tiny rocks, because why not? There we go. And we'll do that random. We'll go back into here and we'll start painting, and you'll notice something different. A nice, nowhere near as full setup because of my settings. We can go over here. We can do something like this. A little bit like that. A little bit more there. Maybe some here. We'll just randomly start painting stuff depending on how we want it. Like this. Go like that. Yeah, why not? Like that. And then we'll hit play. We'll check out our example. We'll run out, and we'll notice we have trees, and we have rocks. We have different sized rocks. Look at that, different sized trees. Certain distances, they're not on top of each other because we've set up our 10. We can obviously adjust this. It's all about personal preference and setup. We have rocks of different sizes, and they're, of course, at an angle based on the terrain itself. They're not straight up because that's the setting we use. See, I have some of these at more of an angle. And it's all based on our foliage settings. It's going to take any of these stash mesh types to put in here. You have tons of options, tons of different settings. You have your different brush sizes you can paint with, densities. Then you have things like reapplying settings, selecting, lasso selecting. You can paint landscapes to make things better. It's just a really fantastic, let me get rid of this stupid foliage tool pop up. There we go. It's a really fantastic tool. Now the one thing I have not covered is painting on the landscape. This allows you to use different layers, such as maybe I wanted to have a rock material and paint a rock sand bed underneath my water and stuff like that. That's more advanced. We're not going to cover that because it's going to require layer blending and things like that. This is going to wrap up the landscape and foliage video. Now after this, we're going to start working towards wrapping this all up. We're going to make a sequencer. A sequencer is a tool introduced recently that allows you to make cinematics. We're going to create just a really generic cinematic that's going to trigger when we leave to give us a little flyover everything. Kind of like a yay, you escaped type thing.